by an English paymaster in 1823. And he stole money from the English army, came here to the United States, and that's how he got his start. So that was on the building you're going to see right on that map, was on the Erie Canal. You can see Summit Park and all in there, but right up in the top there where Erie Canal comes down, that big section is where Trinkus Manor ended up being in the Rose Cottage. So it was the brothers and one sister, Ann. There were 7 children altogether. 2 of the boys decided they'd rather be truckers than work in the restaurant. And so Andy and the other boys started the restaurant, and they actually left the Oriskany Hotel, which they sold, and bought this Rose Cottage, and that became Trinkus Manor. And in the beginning, they were lucky to feed 70 people. It got up to 700 or 1,000 on most days, especially when the lights were there. In the beginning, they didn't have very much money, and the boys had their money that they got out of the Army with, and that's how they survived the first few weeks of working in the business. This is another picture of the mansion. And the mansion had those pillars and all, and when the Trinkus Manor started their restaurant, they kept that vestibule the same as what it was. They actually had the oak furniture. It was a wonderful entrance that you came into. The family of the Waterburys in Oriskany, which is a very popular name there, they had the Waterbury Felt Mill. They bought the Rose Cottage from the English paymaster, whose name was Rice. And then they're the ones, the building was built in 1823, and they sold it to the Trinkus family. Okay, there's Andy when he graduated from school. He lived in Fly Creek and he played football. And when his family bought the Oriskany Hotel, he came to Oriskany and all they had was a soccer team, no football. He wanted to keep playing football, so he asked his parents if he could stay down there, and he worked in Cooperstown in one of the hotels, and he played football for down here at Cooperstown. Well, one day he came home to visit his parents at the hotel, and he met up in the bar with the Whitesboro kids that played Whitesboro football. And they said, "Why don't you come and play with us?" So he said, okay. I read one of the articles that the statute of limitations is worn off because you had to live in Whitesboro to play on the team, and he lived in Oriskany. But they had a winning team that year. They were undefeated. One of the trivia stories I'll tell you is the football team up there, and it's in our book that Dana and I wrote. When Ches Fry used to take the kids down to, you know where Voss's is in Yorkville? Well, there was no football field in the school in Whitesboro, which the high school was on the boulevard. And so he used to get the kids suited up at the Whitesboro school, and he drove his car down behind the team and made them run all the way down to where Voss's is, to the field that was behind there where they played. Okay, the story of how these lights even came to be. Andy and his wife and some other couples went to New York City to see a Giants game because Andy is the biggest Giants fan that ever was. He still is today. And they went to the Polo Grounds for the game, and part of the trip was to go and see the lights in Manhattan. And when he saw all those Christmas lights, he decided there's no reason why Oriskany couldn't have them. I say it's like my mother. She grew up there, and she thought Oriskany was the place, and everybody else just wasn't counting at all. It was just Oriskany. But he had already done the nativity scene and the Christmas tree in the beginning of the driveway as you went in, so he just decided he was going to add to it. So he came back to Oriskany, and I'm sure Ann can tell you he spent many hours getting everything started with the lights. These are going to be just some pictures that I'll show you some of the lights that were, the rocking horse was one of the first things that he built. And if any of you remember, there were storybook houses that went all around the pond, and in the center of the pond was that little merry-go-round thing and there was a waterfalls. And for a lot of the different holidays, like St. Patrick's Day or Valentine's Day, the water was changed to different colors to be the holiday. I'll tell you a little trivia. When we took the display around the park, and I had already known this story, but I wasn't sure if it was true, a waitress had told me, and this lady said to me, well, I've got a story. And I said, you do? And she said, yes. When I was young, I used to drink a little bit too much, and she said I was in Trinkus, and I decided I was going swimming in the pond in the display. It took 3 busboys and her husband to get her out of the water. These are a few of the famous people that visited Trinkus Manor. Part of the reason they had so much company of anybody that you knew about was Sherry Bowler, Congressman Bowler. He was a busboy. He had washed dishes for Trinkus. He also lived with them when he went to college. He still talks to them today. They're very close. But it's the reason that when Miss George, the other one. When George Sr. was vice president of this country, was going to run for president, he was in this area, and he went to Harts Hill, and then he went up to Trinkus for dinner. And the story is that they had to go through the whole place preparing for, or should I mention the first? They had to go through Secret Service, and so everyone had to be screened, all of the workers, the Trinkus family, everybody that was in the area. And Andy tells me that one of the Secret Service men was out in the castle that went around the pond. Another waitress told me that up in the attic there were Secret Service people. So they were all over, and it wasn't open to the public, of course, and none of the help could leave. Once they were screened, they had to stay. So there you see the castle. Here's another person that I'm sure some of you know, Dick Clark. If you don't remember American Bandstand in Pennsylvania, you would remember when it's New Year's Eve, and he used to be the one that was letting the ball come down. He would do Rocking New Year's Eve, and he started out on radio in Utica, and then he ended up on WKTV. And he had come there for dinner. Well, they snuck him in through the kitchen and took him into the back dining room so that he wouldn't be bothered by any of the other patrons. Here's my favorite. This is Jonathan Winters. If any of you remember the Schultz and Dooley commercials that were on television, Dana and I got from the brewery, they loaned us a tape, and it was too long to use in our program, but we listened to it the other day, and of course, part of it is no artificial bubbles, and it's a DVD of all the old TV ads. Yeah, they're a little bit corny, but they were kind of funny when we were looking at them. Someday maybe we'll do a program on that, but Jonathan Winters did all of the male mug characters. He was the voice for all of them. And so every time he would come to town, because they did the commercials here in Utica, he would go to Trinkus Manor and have dinner, and so he had to be snuck in too. So these are some more pictures that'll give you an idea of what the lights did look like at Trinkus. Just a little bit more of trivia. There were 780,000 lights, and the electric bill at the manor went up to $6,000 a month once they were turned on. They ran from November to December because sometimes there would be as many as 15 to 20 tour buses that would come to the manor on a single day. they would feed about 1,000 people. And to have a staff that big, you're going to see in a picture we have later and over in the display over there too, they really had to work hard to take care of these buses when they came to town. And then after the motel was put there, there was a place for them to stay, and they actually stayed in the area for a few days. So Oriskany and our area really benefited from these busloads of people. As I said, Andy started with the rocking horse, and he did the houses, and the houses were actually storybook houses. A lot of the kids that I talked to that are all grown up now remember going there and walking around and seeing the different storybooks. And there were the 3 little pigs, and there was a straw house, and a house built of sticks and one of bricks. There was Santa Claus and Mrs. Santa Claus. There was a twirling carousel, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Prince Charming, and the 3 bears and Goldilocks were later added. A little trivia again. I have all these stories. One time there was a little deer that was hit by a car out in front of the manor, and they brought it in to have it rehabilitated before it was let go again, and I was told that it was kept in one of the houses in the back of the pond. In this slide, you're going to see one of the beautiful pictures of, I believe that's the patio lounge. Is it patio lounge? Andy played the Hammond organ, and the trio, the Oriskany band, or the Trinkus band and the Trinkus trio would be there for your dancing pleasure. And in those days, people used to dress up and come there to dance. Even if they didn't come for dinner, they would come later and have the music was there and they were able to dance. So that was quite an attraction. One of the things that a lot of people told in the memories were how when you walked around and saw these Christmas lights, you looked in and you saw all these people dining, and there would be the women with their furs and they were dressed to the nines. The waiters and everybody were dressed in white uniforms, and everything was just a class act. We don't see so much of that anymore, but it was a wonderful place. This is the picture you would get when you came into the parking lot and parked your car, and it was a great welcome. You would either see Noel or you would see Merry Christmas. And on the front of the building, the Yellow Rose Cottage part where the porch was, there were like pipe organ pipes. It looked like an organ, and the music would be playing. We had Christmas music playing when you came in because that was part of it. I would take my children there when they were little, and you would walk around the path and go around all of the lights, and there was always hot cocoa when you came out, and I think candy canes, I can't remember for sure, but it was just such an experience that my kids are 50 years old today and they still remember it. So, and they actually worked there in the kitchen and waitressing when they were kids. And you have a hard time finding anybody in our area that didn't work there at one time or another. This will show you. There's the family, there's the staff. They were a very compatible group. In that one picture, you're going to see Andy's brother. I thought I wrote it down. Which brother is that, Tony? His brother Tony. Over there in the exhibit, you'll see the other man that's with him, and Karen told me, and I can't remember. John. In fact, his son did a picture board like one of those for a Oriskany museum. The cool thing about all those turkeys, that was a common thing. especially for holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas. They'd be all over the place. But I was told a story the other day by a man who was a mason. He worked for his father. He was a young man at the time. And they were working on the new part where the fiddle bar was, and there were these stone planters, and he said they worked all day, and they, well, at lunchtime decided it was time to go eat lunch, so they started out getting in their cars, and he said to them, "Where are you going?" And they said, "We're going to lunch." And he said, "No, you're not. Go downstairs and have lunch." So they went downstairs, and he told them, "As long as you're working for me, you're going to eat here. You don't go off and get your lunch." So he said he never forgot that. That was just one of the nicest things. You hear an awful lot of good stories about Andy. One of the things that Whitesboro ties into, not only Andy being our football player, but when Whitesboro had their sesquicentennial in 1963, it was a week long of activities, and there were all kinds of things that went on. But one of the things was our ball. That was the end of our whole week, and it was held at Trinkus Manor. We filled the whole place up. And a couple of the stories I've been told, one couple got engaged there that night. So there were a lot of people that did that. This we weren't going to put in the pictures because it's kind of sad to see, but it's part of the story. After the Trinkses decided they were going to sell the business, they sold it, and about 2 years later, this is what happened. And I apologize to the Trinkus family for this because it's hard to look at. It was hard for us to look at. But it's part of the story. But it's not the end of the story, and that's the good thing. Because then, Mayor Joe Griffo from Rome, who was a friend of Andy's, he got a hold of him, and he said, "What's going to happen to the lights?" Well, Andy had already taken some of the lights to the Trinkus Park, which is where the battleship park is in Oriskany by the Oriskany Museum, and if you go up there, you're going to see the poinsettias are out there. They were part of the path. Also, his nativity is on the corner of the lot, which would be the parking lot. So Andy said, "Well, we can bring them to Oriskany." So he donated, or to Rome, I'm sorry. They donated him to Rome. He spends a lot of time up there every day. If you call his house, Ann will tell you he's already gone to Rome. He starts out 7 o'clock in the morning, I believe. He's up there. I went up there to interview him because that's the only place that he sat still for very long, and he works on all of the electrical business, refurbishing a lot of the things, rebuilding some of the exhibits. And if you go up there to see their display, it's near the Rome Historical Society. It's a beautiful park there. And this year, the lights that were down at the Masonic have been donated to Rome. So I know Andy was on the radio program asking for a storage place to put them because they've got so many lights now. The park recreation building in Rome is just, it's crammed full of lights. Of course, they're all out now. We have, Mr. Griffo couldn't be here today, but he did send a statement to read to you. And then after this, we'll go and show some more slides, and then we'll ask for questions.
Thanks, Judy. It's a statement from New York State Senator Joe Griffo. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and a special thank you to Judy and Dana for putting together this program to highlight such a valued treasure in our community. So thank you from Senator. The Trinkus family is an outstanding family in our community, and their generosity over the years has touched many lives and created memories that will last a lifetime. As a child, I always looked forward to visiting Trinkus Manor every Christmas with my family and being dazzled by the festive decorations that adorn their property. To this day, I can still visualize the colorful lights glowing in the nighttime snow. Over the years, I had the pleasure to get to know Andy Trinkus and his family, and to see all the good they did for our community. So like when many of you, I was saddened when the devastating fire swept through Trinkus Manor. Luckily, many of the light fixtures were spared that day, and too many childhood memories persisted to ever allow those lights to perish forever. As the mayor of Rome, I thought to myself, why not bring the Trinkus lights to Rome? So I reached out to Andy Trinkus in 1992 and asked him to donate the lights so we would be able to display them in perpetuity. The Trinkus family said yes, and the rest is history. The Trinkus lights continue to come to life each holiday, bringing joy to so many people, as they always have. And it's great to see Andy Trinkus continue to play an active role in keeping this tradition alive. Joe Griffo.
Well, if you notice, Andy has a hat on. That's Andy's signature hat. And everybody can see him coming. St. Paul's Church can tell you he wears that there. He's been very active in St. Paul's, singing in the choir and Ann too. But if you go to the old Oriskany, Mr. Fay's business where he does copies, but he also has coffee there on the wall, is the old hat, because one day he came in there and gave him the hat. So I wanted to read this poem. Andy's hat. This is the hat that Andy wore through sun and rain and snow. Everywhere that Andy went, the hat was sure to go. The hat was perched atop his head, the brim was bent just right. We often wondered if he wore the hat to bed at night. He wore the hat to play his golf, he wore the hat to dine. Perhaps beneath this cherished hat, a glowing paint did shine. Whatever were his reasons, the hat remained in place, and we were glad to see it, for it framed his smiling face. One day he came and took that hat and placed it on a chair, and when I looked up in surprise, another hat was there. It was the same, yet newer than the one that left his head, and when I wondered at the change, it's just worn out, he said. So now upon my wall you'll see the weathered hat is hung. It holds in place the memories of when we all were young, reminding us that hats wear out, and also do we men, and that those days when we were new will never come again. He wears this new hat proudly now with much the self-same fold, which we need to know that story. It is unique in all our round, except the one of old. He's been a doer all his life, we're all aware of that, but if you should have any doubt, just look at Andy's hat. And one more story that I wanted to tell you. A year after the fire, Andy was out there raking leaves, and his house is right behind there, so it would be Ann and Andy's backyard. And he was out raking leaves, and this limo pulled up in the parking lot. And the driver got out, and he took out a table, and he took out 2 chairs, and he took out a bottle of champagne, and 2 people got out of the limo. The couple had a champagne toast for their anniversary, because they had their wedding reception at Trinkus Manor, and they planned to come back for their anniversary every year. That's why they were in the parking lot with the champagne. Another one of the wonderful stories that were told. Here's some more pictures of the lights. These are in Rome. So if you go up there, you're going to see a complete display. And then you'll see this picture that was, oh, what's the next one? Okay. That's Snow White, I believe. There's the train. There he is. He works very diligently in that garage up there for the Parks Department in Rome, and he's got a solder gun, and he's got his gloves on, and he's working right along. There's the hat. That's the old, I think that's the new hat. This is how they put them together. He works right along with the workforce up there in Rome, and it's gotten to be quite a job because they've gotten all those lights from Wonderland of Lights to do too. There he is with the solder gun. He's very good at telling you stories, and most of them are, people have heard them before, I'm sure, but they're just special because the lights meant so much to all of us. This is the Riscony Park, and you'll see the poinsettias. They're lit up at night there. Andy and a friend put those up every year. I think they still do. Yeah. There he is, the hat. Okay, we wanted to thank a few people that helped. I'm sure this isn't everybody that helped and contributed, but Karen Jacobson, who's the curator of Oriskany Museum, Andy and Ann, who have either on the phone and in person, David Fay from Fay's 2 Print Copy Shop, and the Onieda County Historical Society for hosting this today. There's refreshments in the back. We wanted to see if you had any memories that you wanted to share. One thing I want Andy to tell us why he puts the brims up on the hat.
You want to know about the hat? I'll tell you what, back in '82 when Sherry Bullard first ran for Congress, I was his assistant. And we were down in Bangor, and he was giving a speech. Some very, very elite restaurant. There was a club, and I was out in the bar with my hat on, and this Mayor D comes out, and he says, "Sir, you got to take your hat off. You don't allow hats in here." So I used my Texas drawl. I told him, "You know, I'm from Texas. We never take our hats off in Texas." And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize." And ever since, I don't take my hat off at all. But let me tell you a little about these decorations. The first decoration I built was 1947. And if you go to Oriskany, and if you see the nativity set on the corner there, that's the first set I made. I cut it out with plywood with a little hand jigsaw. My dad helped me. That's 1947, and it's still up there. You go up there and see it, and it's still up. But I really enjoy doing these things. I got a lot of my ideas out of New York City. But I could never have too many lights on a display. And I get a kick out of people in Rome because they ought to criticize you for having too many lights. But you can never have too many lights on a Christmas display. And I make sure of that. But in Rome, the only ones, the original was the Santa Claus house. You see the Bambi's deer house that was mentioned here a while ago. We got the deer, my dad and I had to build a house for him, so we built a little house, Bambi's house. Well, the state came along and made us get rid of the deer. Well, they took the deer. And so I made a Christmas decoration out of it. And if you go to Rome, you'll see the Bambi house. That's where little Jack Horner sits in there now. And he's with. And so got the lights all around it. And the new ones are the carousel, brand new, all replaced. The Santa Claus workshop's all replaced. The churches are replaced. The trains are all replaced. The castle's been replaced. I rebuilt all of these. But this is an accumulation of about 10 years. And I just finished Rome the past week. Then I came and did Oriskany. I just finished Oriskany the day before yesterday. And if I didn't do these things, God knows I wouldn't even be here today, because this keeps me occupied, and I really enjoyed it. But the big thing here, what a tribute this is. I never expected this tribute. Thanks a lot.
helps us. I just thought of something that Trinkus Manor had special things that they used to have for food.
That's awesome.
One of the things that Ann told me about was the patisa bread. Well, I got the recipe off the internet, and I'll tell you, I'll never make it again. Your mother-in-law and your daughter that make it, it's a lot of work, and I've got it back there. I don't know if it's edible or not, but you can try and tell me if I did a good job. But a couple of the things that were brought to mind from some of the waitresses up there is when you went into their front lobby, they had so many people talk about their salad dressings and different things that they made. Peach Melba was one of the favorite desserts there. Cherry's Jubilee was done where they came right to your table and fixed it. And it was a really class act. And one of the stories was Trinkus Manor was known for their onion rings. Well, when Tony was in the Army, he was in Texas, and he went to a restaurant and he ate the onion rings there, and he asked if he could talk to the chef and get the recipe, and they said, oh no, can't give the recipe, that's our signature thing. So he decided he'd find a way, so he came back in his Army uniform and he said that he was the base inspector for where the other soldiers were going to eat, and he had to inspect the kitchen to make sure it was all right for them to be there. And while he was in there, he figured out how they made their onion rings. That became a signature thing at Trinkus Manor in Oriskany. So, do any of you have any memories you'd like to share? We have to bring you the mic.
53 years ago, a little German came to Cornhill and plucked me out and took me dancing and dinner every Saturday night, dressed in a suit and a tie. It was at Trinkus Manor. And thank God for the music that they played, because we're still here 53 years later. And it was a wonderful Saturday night. Every Saturday night we were there for dinner and dancing with a suit and a tie.
Congratulations. Thank you. From that far away. Yeah. One other memory that I wanted to share, and I forgot about it. I did this program not with PowerPoint, but because Dana has done that, she's brought me into this century. But a couple of years ago, I went to a couple of nursing homes, and I did it for the senior center in Whitesboro. And when I went to Masonic Home to do the program, there was a man there who was a resident, and the director said, you have to take this to Paul. Paul was the bartender in Oriskany. He and his wife met there, and his wife's name was Stephanie, the love of his life. He wanted to come to the program, and I showed him what I was going to do, and he was all excited about it. But in the week's time between then and when I presented the program, he got very sick and ended up in bed and couldn't come. So the director and I went upstairs with the whole thing, the storyboards and all, and we saw him, and he was so happy. He showed me his wife's picture. He told me all the stories that he knew from Trinkus. And the poor man passed away a couple weeks later. So I'm so happy that things like this get around for others to enjoy. Any other memories? Do you want the mic?
Let her go first.
Well, my son was a busboy there, and my daughter was a waitress. And we used to go dancing there every Saturday night and most New Year's Eves. And I remember once we went to a wedding reception in the afternoon there. And we just stayed and ate and then stayed for dancing later, so we were there for hours.
They probably offered you a room in the motel.
Thank you. One of the great traditions in my family when I was a much younger man was each year
my grandmother and grandfather would pick us up right after school, we'd go eat, and then we'd go all around the Mohawk Valley looking at lights. And of course, the great exclamation mark on the end was always to end up at Trinkus Manor, where my brother and I would literally sit in front of each of those houses for about 5 minutes until Grandma and Grandpa said, "Come on, we have to get going." There's two urban legends surrounding the lights. I was wondering if anybody could speak to them. The first being that the largest parts, the Noel and the Merry Christmas, were purchased from a large department store in New York City and brought here and refurbished.
No, he made it himself.
Very good. All right, well, I'll tell everybody on the internet. Tell everybody on the internet they're wrong, which is a popular thing to do on the internet. And the second one being, the second urban legend being that the New York Central and the Penn Central and Amtrak had to build 2 minutes into their schedule from November to December because the trains were routinely slowed down by the conductors so people could see the lights.
I don't know if they slowed down, but you always pointed out the lights when you went by, and also
And saying that conductors would point out the lights when they were passing by. The train tracks were not that far away. The boulevard where you drove and then right across the flat land, which you see them very well.
I gotta tell you, the train, one went by the manor down the train track, and the conductor of the passenger train, the trains that went down by the manor, the conductor of the passenger train would have the engineers slow the trains down, and they would make an announcement, look out to the right side of the window or the left side of the window, which way they're going, and the train would slow down so they'd see the lights of Trinkus Manor. And I said, what a great tribute that was. So thousands and thousands of people saw these lights. And by the way, if you haven't seen them in Rome yet, make sure you go see them. They're almost equally beautiful as they were in Trinkus Manor. Don't forget.
So I want to tell you there's coffee and some goodies back there, and if you're real brave, you can try their bread. Let me know if I came anywhere close to it. It's so good to have all of you come out for this. These programs are free. They have them almost every weekend here. There is a box out there if you want to put $1 in, you can do that, but you don't have to. But it's all volunteers that do these programs and take care of these museums, and ours in Whitesboro is the same thing. We've just started our museum January 1st. We moved to the upstairs of the town hall, which was the courthouse in Whitesboro. We don't have any open hours right now, but after the first of the year we hope to. But during our farmers market, the museum was open. We got a lot of activity, and I really enjoy hearing the stories from everyone. So thank you for coming. The goodies are back there. Mr. Trinkus is 93 years old. That's pretty remarkable. And Anne has been by his side all those years since she was the singer in the Oriskany Hotel. So thank you.